What's happening, Internet fam? So I have accumulated a bunch of data here in the state of Hawaii. I'm wearing my California shirt because I think somebody should be doing the same data processing in California. And also because my girlfriend made me wear it. So, hey. Let's go ahead and look at the data for Hawaii surrounding COVID. All right, so here is one of the key facts here. The governor here, his name is Governor Ige. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. 17 people have died in Hawaii, and of the 17, as you can clearly see by this chart, almost all of them were in the 60 plus range age-wise, and almost all of them had a serious underlying health issue. I go through the data in this paper, and I'll put a link to this to the blog where you can actually read all the data yourself if you want. But here's a more alarming fact. Hawaii is experiencing a 34% unemployment rate right now, up from normally a 2.7. And here's the thing. COVID, 17 people have died, ostensibly, according to the governor, of COVID. Now, whether they actually died of their underlying issues, given that they were already over 65 and had serious health issues, maybe they were already dying, and then they just happened to get COVID. Maybe it sped along. Maybe it didn't. Maybe they were just going to die anyway. But this is much more worrying to me. That currently Hawaii is experiencing a 34% unemployment rate, up from 2.7, of course, because of the COVID shutdown. So just to give you some perspective, this is the unemployment rate in 2019 and 2020. So you can see that these numbers are in fact terrifying, clearly. Now then I went and read a study, and there's a link to the study in the paper here, about how many people die as a correlation and connection to the unemployment rate. And if these numbers are correct when applied to Hawaii, because the original study I was reading was actually for the UK, so my guess is the numbers are going to be a little bit different in Hawaii. But if those numbers from that UK study hold true in Hawaii, this is the projected death by unemployment here for men and for women in 2019 and in 2020. 2019, 2020. So this is a pretty serious giant jump in the deaths that will be caused as a correlation to unemployment here in Hawaii. Probably much, much more serious than the deaths by COVID. And again, I welcome you to look at the study, do all the numbers yourself, and find the numbers in your state. But in Hawaii, where we've had 17 people die of COVID, allegedly, and 15 of them were over 65 and already seriously ill, this to me is much, much more worrying than anything to do with COVID. But, you know, and I talk more about the study and what it means. Just to give you some perspective here, that means that we expect an increase of 1,300 dead men and 730 dead women here in Hawaii in 2020 due to unemployment, not due to COVID, because of the COVID lockdown. And again, here's some perspective on the actual numbers in Hawaii as a whole. There are 1.4 million people here, and 17 have died of COVID. So those are the numbers according to the governor of Hawaii. So you can argue with the numbers if you want. So we're looking at potentially an increase of 2,045 deaths here in Hawaii, up from the normal 300 deaths we have per year due to unemployment, if you believe the numbers in that study hold true for Hawaii the same way they do in UK. I mean, there's a lot of, but I mean, whether they're exact or whether it's just a good tool to measure by, it's worth thinking about. And again, here's a chart of how many people we can expect to die in 2020 due to unemployment, men and women, and everybody who's died of COVID, all 17 of them. Again, all 17 of whom were over 65 and had serious underlying health issues. I mean, pretty much. And I point out in the paper that the numbers that we got from the CDC, from the World Health Organization, from Fauci, from Bill Gates, these are all lies. They're irrefutably lies. I mean, they were projecting 2 million deaths or something. It's nutty. And here's my favorite chart. This is a chart showing how many people have died who were healthy and under 70 due to COVID. And if you notice this number here, this is kind of a key number here. The number is 0. 0 people have died due to COVID who are under 70 and healthy. And so for me, it seems like a way more serious issue that we are potentially putting 2,400 people up on the chopping block for this COVID thing. And I wonder why these numbers aren't being told to us by corporate media. I wonder why our policy at the state level, the city level, everywhere is being driven by a complete ignorance of the correlation between morbidity and unemployment. It's like they don't care about the unemployed at all. And I wonder why our policymakers are so beholden to the corporate media narrative, which is clearly a lie now. And just for another little tidbit of information, the year that Woodstock occurred, I think it was 1968, somewhere there, late 60s, right? The year Woodstock occurred, there was an actual pandemic that hit the United States of America. And like over 100,000 people died, which at the time, those were huge numbers because there was a lot less people in America. The population was a lot lower back then. And nobody was wearing masks. Nobody was changing the lifestyle. They weren't shutting down restaurants and bars. People were outdoors in the mud doing acid, having sex with strangers. And now in 2020, a few senior citizens died that were very likely going to die anyway. And we've completely killed the entire economy. So now that's Hawaii. I invite you to do these numbers for your state, California, everywhere else. And I invite you to also be very, very skeptical of the numbers you're getting, because there's a lot of evidence. Doctors, nurses have been pointing out that they've been very strongly pressured to put COVID on the death certificate, even if it wasn't COVID, or if they had all kinds of underlying other morbidities, pneumonia, heart disease, diabetes, lifelong smoker, emphysema. I mean, these are things that they're being labeled as COVID because they also tested positive for COVID while they were dying of these like much more serious illnesses. So be very skeptical of the numbers you're getting, but I'm just taking the numbers straight from the governor. So Governor Ige, please, for the love of God, put everybody back to work. Otherwise, thousands of Hawaiians are going to die.